today's episode of Future Says, we have Mike Battaglia, the Chief Operating Officer at Blink Charging. Mike, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us more about yourself and Blink Charging.
Boy, so I think my primary role at Blink is to herd all the cats and make sure we're going in the right direction. But more formally, I'm responsible for both sales and operations at Blink, which covers a multitude of areas. So obviously sales, business development, but also maybe more kind of near and dear and topical are things like charger deployments, making sure chargers are working. Uptime is what we call it out in the field. So very challenging. But also very rewarding for the team.
Okay, and Blink Charging, tell me a bit more.
So Blink is a full-service EV infrastructure company. So, in fact, we're the only vertically integrated company in the industry. So what does that mean? It means we offer the full range of EV charging products, from home products to commercial level 2 to DC fast chargers. So sometimes people refer to DC fast chargers as like Tesla superchargers, right? So that's the equivalent of a DC fast charger. We manufacture much of that equipment ourselves, and we have in-house development of the software network that powers all of these charging stations, not only here in the U.S., but we're also globally in 26 countries. So that software network is now universal, and it covers both here and overseas.
Okay, so is there still an excuse for customers to say, hey, I can't go to an EV because there's not enough charging stations?
It's a great question, and I'm going to answer it a couple of different ways. Number one is, to your point, the number one reason why someone does not purchase an electric vehicle is because of the infrastructure or lack of infrastructure, their perception of that. So is that real still? Yes. But what I always say is every single day that goes by, Blink and other companies in the industry are installing chargers. So literally every day that goes by, we have more and more and more chargers in the ground. So depending on your use case as a consumer, if you do mostly local driving to and from work, to and from the grocery store, things like that, that's a perfect scenario for owning an electric vehicle. If you do tons of road trips, long distance, you have to plan more. And the infrastructure's out there. You just have to make sure that you're diligent about planning. Now, again, each day that goes by, things like highway infrastructure, fast charging, that's going to continue to get better and better and better.
Okay, so I'm based in London. We've got a lot of Europeans on the line. Tell us a bit more about EV charging in the US, for example. Is it widespread all over the country, or are there pockets where it's a bit more mature, a bit less mature?
Yeah, I'm going to actually start with Europe and then go back to the US for a
Go
second.
for it.
So we have the luxury of having a pretty substantial presence in Europe. And what that does is it gives us a little bit of crystal ball view into the future about how the U.S. could look in a few years, because, as you know, I think Europe is fairly far ahead of the U.S. in EV adoption. So one of the things that we're seeing is that EV infrastructure is being utilized more and more and more. So we track the electricity that's being dispensed from all the chargers that we own and operate throughout Europe, and it's almost a hockey stick, right? So it's really incredible to see. Now we're starting to see the front edge of that in the U.S. Now, what we concentrate on, and I think this is pretty natural, is we're looking at deploying infrastructure where the greatest need is. So where the highest concentration of EVs are being sold is where we are typically deploying EV charging. Now, that is going to just continue to progress throughout the United States. So certainly along the two coasts is the highest penetration, and then we'll start to get into the interior of the U.S. And really it's important that it's a phased approach and that we have what we often say, the right charger in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm. So if the U.S. is taking some lessons from Europe, is Europe taking some lessons from Asia? What are you thinking about what's going on in Asia?
I think Europe has a pretty good handle on it themselves, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, they've done a nice job.
Yeah, and Blink Charging in Asia, are you expanding into that area?
Sort of. And we have not historically had a presence in Asia, but we actually just opened a small office in South Korea. So we're kind of dipping our toe in the water.
Exciting.
And we're going to see how that goes, but early indications are it's promising. So.
Okay. What's holding things back, escalating even faster?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting conversation that's happening throughout the media, anecdotal, and just to clarify a couple things. Number one, all of the research from PricewaterhouseCoopers, from McKinsey, from other really top tier research houses says that 90% of all the kilowatt hours that are going to get dispensed into electric vehicles are going to be on level 2 charging stations. Only 10% will be through DC fast charging. Now, the conversation and the articles written and the media and the dialogue is the inverse of that, right? 90% of the conversation is about DC fast charging, 10% is about level 2. Now, why do I mention that? Because when we talk about breaking down the barrier of customer perception about, man, I'm not sure if I want to buy a vehicle because I don't know if there's enough infrastructure. Level 2 charging is actually a fraction of the cost of DC fast charging. So the charger is a fraction of the cost, the infrastructure is a fraction of the cost, and the timeline to install it is much, much shorter. So in round numbers, you can have a level 2 charging station in the ground within 90 days of saying go. A DC fast charger is typically a year or more. So when we talk about getting more infrastructure out there, we're really advocates of level 2 and what we call community infrastructure. So charging stations that are at parks, charging stations that are at shopping malls, charging stations that are at hotels. So when people who own an electric vehicle are staying overnight somewhere, they can charge overnight. So the rapidity or the speed with which we can deploy infrastructure is much faster for level 2 than it is for DC fast. They both have a role, but we have to understand what the expectations and the timelines are.
Okay, so you said within your role, you're also responsible for sales, right?
Correct.
So am I right in saying it's a pretty easy job? Everybody wants a charger right now?
So when I joined Blink 3.5 years ago, we had 40 employees and the company had total revenue of about $6 million.
Okay.
Fast forward a little more than 36 months, we have 700 employees globally, and we guided to Wall Street to be full year $128 to $133 million in revenue. So we're comfortable with that. We feel good about it. But to give you an idea of going from $6 million to $133 million within 3 years, there's nothing easy about that. We've purchased 6 companies in the last couple of years. So integrating all of those organizations, building Blink, and having people buy into the vision, what we want to do is a lot of long days and long nights, but it's very rewarding for not just me, but for, I think, our entire team.
Yeah. Again, so as COO, I mean, in the automotive space now, we see so many mergers and acquisitions and things like this happening. For our audience, what's it like to acquire a company and try to integrate a company into your own company?
Super easy.
Just like sales.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say it's never easy purchasing a company and integrating it. But what you learn along the way is that there's certain methodologies, certain systems, certain processes. Once you've kind of taken your lumps a couple times, you know how to do it better and better and better, right? So each time we've done it a little bit better. And I think we really have kind of a good idea of how we want to integrate companies into Blink. What also is important is making sure that the folks that are coming into Blink feel comfortable with that process, understand the vision, where we're going, what we want to do. And generally speaking, I'm a little bit more of a rip the Band-Aid off guy. Okay. So I want to bring people into the fold at Blink much, much more quickly and not let things kind of linger with dual brands or things like that. My experience is employees tend to be much happier when you go faster.
So our company, Altair, and our CEO, he loves acquiring companies too, does it quite a lot. And I think one thing he regularly repeats is, I acquire founder-led companies and I integrate those founders into the company. And that's kind of his recipe for success. Do you have kind of a trick up your sleeve as well? Or what are you looking for when you're acquiring a company?
Well, when we're looking to, I think our sort of our tastes have changed depending on the climate and what we need. So about 18 months ago now, we acquired a company called SemaConnect, which was the largest acquisition in the company's history. And the principal reason why we acquired Sema is because they had a very strong manufacturing footprint. So when we talk about the current climate in the U.S., there's a lot of emphasis on Buy America. And they have manufacturing footprint here in the U.S., specifically in Maryland. So that was the motivation for us to acquire Sema. We liked the manufacturing capability, and we really liked the stations and the design of the stations themselves. When we look across the pond at Europe, what we're really looking for predominantly are one of two things: either innovative tuck-in technologies, or number two, organizations that own and operate a lot of charging stations. Because one of the sort of what's in the DNA of Blink is being able to offer multiple business models out to the market. We are the most flexible EV charging company out there, bar none. And why do I say that? Because if you want to buy a charging station from us, you can buy a charging station from us. But we also have 3 other business models depending on the level of an investment that you want to make. So some of our customers don't want to invest a dime in this, and they want somebody like Blink to do it. And if we look at a location and it meets our analytical criteria, we will actually fund 100% of that project, which is what we call Blink owned. So we own every aspect of that project, from operations, maintenance, et cetera. We make sure that charger is up. Then our most popular, outside of purchasing a station from us, is what we call a hybrid. And that is where the location will fund the infrastructure, so actually connecting the chargers to the panels and running the conduit and the wire and all that stuff. And we come in and install the charging station at no cost. And again, we own it, we operate it, maintain it, and we split the revenue, 60% Blink, 40% customer. And again, that is, we earn our return on investment on the usage of that charging station. So again, when we talk about things in Europe, the EV adoption is so much higher there, and public usage of charging stations is so strong that we want to look to acquire companies that own and operate a network.
Sure. You mentioned analytical criteria there. So if something meets that criteria, you'll do a Blink-owned project.
Correct.
Can you talk to us a bit more about what that criteria is?
Yeah, absolutely. So that criteria, so number one, every address has to stand on its own. So we do look at things on a portfolio basis, but we want to make sure that there is a reasonable ROI on every single address. So what we do is look at things like electric vehicle registrations within the market. So within a 1 mile, 3 mile, 5 mile radius, we look at how many businesses are concentrated in the area, population, customer demographics, things like that. So we weight all of that criteria, we score it, and we say, does that meet, whether it be a full Blink-owned turnkey project, or maybe we want to do a hybrid, or maybe we want to do something even a little more innovative. And we've had plenty of customers recently, which is very interesting, purchase charging stations from us and give us back a portion of the revenue in order to maintain the charging station. So they never have to worry about warranty, they never have to worry about downtime. If something happens, we fix it because we're getting actually a percentage of that.
Okay, and what portion of your chargers are you responsible for all the warranty and everything else of that?
So right now in the US, we are about 80% where we sell chargers and about 20% where we do some form of owning and operating electricity sales, and we're responsible for the maintenance and uptime.
Okay, so maintenance and uptime then. I mean, I do a lot of work in manufacturing, and people are constantly talking about predictive maintenance, looking at data and being able to understand what's the health of that, when could that fail, let me plan maintenance around that. Is that something Blink is looking at?
Yeah, so we have our first step into that is we have just implemented a feature in our network which is called proactive monitoring. And what that means is, we have thousands of network connected stations in the US. And the network actually will ping us proactively when a charging station goes down or there's something wrong with it. So instead of us having to kind of hunt within the network to see, hey, what's going on kind of across the board, we're getting proactive messaging now on what's happening. So that's the first step of that, right? Then once we have that, we can look to correct that situation much more quickly. But then to your point, the next iteration of this is how do we incorporate AI in order to do things like predictive maintenance so that we can dispatch technicians or we can reset charging stations remotely. We can do some things kind of in the tool bag, if you will, in order to prevent that from going down for any period of time that is meaningful.
Interesting. As you move towards AI, are you looking to a different skill set of employee, or are you looking to upskill existing staff to do things like this?
Yeah, so I'm going to tip way over my skis here, so I would say probably all of the above. Okay, I've just learned how to use ChatGPT, which is great.
Nice.
My college son uses it, unfortunately, with his academics, so we sometimes have to reel that back. But I guess everybody else is too. No, but to answer your question, it would be a combination of developing the skill sets of our internal employees as well as bringing in new skill sets.
Okay, so how many chargers do you have today in the field?
So since the company's inception, we have sold or deployed more than 80,000 charging stations globally. Within the United States, we have more than 20,000 coast to coast. Most of those are network connected. And then we have another 30,000 or so, kind of currently operating in Europe. But yeah, it's a lot. It's tens of thousands.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the vision or the objective is, let's say, by the end of 2025, what are you looking to go to?
Well, we look at it from a business operations perspective. So we don't necessarily look at it in terms of, how many,
Okay.
right? We look at it in terms of how do we want the business to grow sustainably and healthy. So we're a publicly traded company, so we obviously have shareholders that we're beholden to and all of that stuff. But, there isn't an EV charging infrastructure company right now operating in the US that's profitable. So our goal for 2024, and we've publicly stated this, is to get to EBITDA positive on a run rate basis by December of 2024. So it's not necessarily about, we want to install another 50,000 or 30,000 or 10,000 or 20,000. I mean, we have internal goals to roll up to that,
Sure.
but it's really about creating a company that is sustainable, that's not dependent on public sector funding, that we can, if that public sector funding goes away, that we can continue to operate as a healthy organization. We think that's good for Blink, and we think it's good for the industry overall.
Why is that the case today, that it's so difficult for a charging company to become profitable?
Because the industry's still young. We say it, right? It's like we're still at the beginning of this. So as I mentioned earlier, right, in 3.5 years, Blink, 6 million to 133 million, right? At least top end of our forecast, okay, that we feel confident about. But, so it's just been, I think, these aren't, it's not like you're selling a piece of software or you're selling something and, you can plug it in and flip it on today, right? These are construction projects. These are, in some cases, heavier infrastructure projects. So it's taking time. It's taking time to ramp and to scale and also to become more and more efficient. So efficiency is a big focus of ours as well.
Okay, amazing. And you said that the big goal then is to try be EBITDA positive. How are you going to get to that in the next year?
There's only two ways to do it, and it's revenue growth and it's cost avoidance. And we're working on a very concentrated strategic plan to make sure that we get there. So we're holding the whole organization accountable for each of their areas, and just making sure, quite frankly, that we're just a disciplined organization. When I look back at Blink, 2 years ago, even 18 months ago, we were in this just rocket ship growth mode. We just said, just go, 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 right? Not as much emphasis on kind of operating the company. And now we've made that, maturity transition as a company where, okay, we have the critical mass, we have the foundation, people know who Blink is, and now we have to, I often say, grow up and become a real company, right? And part of that is just discipline, right? It's just, running a company well.
And tell us about that. As you grow and as the chief operating officer, how do you keep people motivated, moving from a startup to a scale up to a listed company? What are the difficulties? What are the opportunities?
Yeah, from a motivation standpoint, I'm a huge believer that my number one priority is to empower and provide the information and tools that the people that work in the organization need to do their job successfully. So it's not about us kind of, dictating what happens. It's about making sure that we are engaged with our employees, asking about their positions, and finding out what they need in order to be more successful. So as an example, every time I'm at one of our facilities that has a warehouse, the very first thing that I do before anything else is I walk through the front door, I walk back to the production area, and I walk back to the warehouse. And I walk around the warehouse to see what's in stock. I talk to the shipping guys, to say, hey, how are things going? And that's where you get the intelligence. That's where you really understand how things are happening. So, hopefully, I don't think it's just me at Blink that does that. We have a lot of really, really good, talented people, but, that's how I'd kind of answer that.
Sure. As a company, I mean, you work so hard, you motivate your staff so hard, and you can run the company so perfectly well, but it's also somewhat dependent on external forces.
Yes.
That can either help or can hinder the company. Can you talk about some of those forces that at the moment are helping or some that are maybe hindering your progress?
Yeah, let me start with hindering, okay? So what's not helpful is the political climate, right? So you have kind of this bickering happening around battery electric vehicles. You have, in some instances, the press making statements and framing articles that are, inflammatory and maybe not 100%, really what's happening, right? Surprise, surprise, right? But, so our mission, so that's certainly not helpful. But, the way we look at that is we say, you know what, it's noise. Because this is an industry that's new, it's still evolving. There's a ton of investment happening in the space from OEMs, right, that are deploying, developing, and launching brand new battery electric vehicles all the time. There's a ton of new non-Tesla BEVs that are hitting the market and will hit the market in 2024. Now, what's helping? What's helping is that, and just the fact that you have, especially for instance, private fleets, they are looking to make this transition. So they're coming to companies like Blink to help them understand what are the infrastructure needs that they have. So while you have kind of this noise up here, I always say, you know what, I don't get concerned unless the phone stops ringing. And the phone continues to ring. So, again, we have a plan, we're sticking to it. The rest of it's noise. We're just going to do the best we can.
And can you talk to us about regulation? What's happening? Where is it happening? How is that important?
So there's, I think, probably the most significant piece of what I'll call legislation is around the President Biden's NEVI program. So that is the deployment of 500,000 charging stations coast to coast, high-speed fast charging along highway corridors. So that is very helpful and beneficial to the industry, not just to Blink. There's also a component to that. There's $2.5 billion that's set aside for level 2 community charging. And that's Blink's bread and butter. So, in fact, I think today there were multiple awards announced across many states about where that they call it CFI, where that CFI funding is going. So we really, really look forward to that. There's other things that are beneficial to Blink, like what we call the ZEV states, zero emission vehicle states. And that's, for instance, California that has said, hey, by 2035, you can only buy a BEV and you're not going to buy an internal combustion engine. Now, we can debate that a little bit, right,
Yep.
in terms of choice. But, but for Blink, stuff like that's good, obviously. But, whether it's, even if we're falling short of that kind of mandate, there are climate goals out there that are driving EV adoption. And, we're going to be right there in those areas that are interested in putting in infrastructure. And again, the future is very, very bright. It is.
You had mentioned the media and how they sometimes paint a negative picture of EVs. And I know you shared an article recently about fires.
Oh, you saw that?
Batteries. I saw that article.
Yeah, it was this morning. Yeah.
So talk to us about that. What are some of the things the press are saying that you would refute? Fires being one. Are there others?
It's a great. Thanks for asking that. So the article was about research that's been done on the incidence rate of vehicle fires for internal combustion engine vehicles versus battery electric vehicles. And basically, the article presents the research that shows that the incidence rate of an internal combustion engine vehicle catching on fire is multiples higher than a battery electric vehicle. So now, to be fair, and all the facts, it's harder to put out a fire on a BEV, right, because of the lithium-ion battery.
Sure.
But, there's not that many incidences of those, but they get publicized and they get dramatized, right? And again, technology is going to evolve, right? So guess what? Firefighters and fire companies are going to figure out, and they have them, the materials that are easier to put out, stuff like that, right? So, but again, we manage to the facts, we don't manage to the hype.
Any other things the press are putting out there? You see trends, you see lots and lots of articles that you would refute?
I'll only answer it in the way that, what we don't pay attention to are half-truths or, kind of doomsday scenarios or anything like that. So I'm going to kind of circle right back to, I don't get concerned about that stuff until the phone stops ringing,
Yep.
right? And the phone is still ringing.
Okay. We all know cars. We're used to cars. We somewhat know how a car is made.
Mm-hmm.
I think increasingly people are becoming knowledgeable of how a battery is made and the different complexities, intricacies of that. What goes into making a charger? What's in there?
Yeah, so a charger is effectively a PCB board or a computer board. It is some form of credit card reader, generally speaking, and it is a case and it's a cable. And at the end of the day, those are the major components of a level 2 charging station. Now, when we get to DC fast charging stations, there's a lot more involved in it, right? There's those things that I talked about. There's really large power modules, power controllers, things like that. And that's why, a level 2 charging station is $7,000 and a DC fast charger $70,000.
Okay.
So that's the difference, right? And they're much, much more complex. But when it comes to level 2, they're not that much different than a computer. And one of the things that we're able to do is, if a customer is having trouble with a charging station, we can remotely reset it. So again, if we use the computer analogy, if your computer is getting buggy, what do? You restart it, right? And it fixes it, 90% of the time, right? And then if you really feel like you're having trouble, what do? You turn it off, you maybe unplug it, then you plug it back in and turn it back on again, right? And we have that capability as well. We can reset charging stations that way. And again, it's a very small percentage of the time that we have to do stuff like that.
And in terms of the manufacture of these chargers, is that an automated basis, a manual basis? How long does it take to create one of these complex things?
Oh, that's a great question. So I don't know how long it takes. I'll have to find that out, actually. But the way that we operate is we own a manufacturing facility in India, and we actually kit out the components in India. They get shipped to the United States to our assembly facility in the U.S. So then our production team takes those raw components, and some of those are sourced in the U.S. as well. And basically, we run them through the shop. And the finished product gets completed and shipped by Blink here in the U.S., specifically in right outside of D.C. in Maryland. So you'd be amazed, by the way, our manufacturing capacity right now in Maryland is 20,000 units. We're about to expand it to 50,000. We're moving into a new facility, but you would be amazed at how small the room is to produce 20,000 charging stations here. It'd actually blow your mind. These guys are like incredibly efficient. They kind of have their act together. Every time I go in there, I'm amazed. I'm like, guys, you produce 20,000 chargers out of here?
Yeah.
So, but the great news is the demand for the business has increased, and we have a 30,000 square foot facility about to open towards the end of February.
Okay. As we start to wrap up, another question: what makes you most excited about the future of the EV space?
Yeah. Number one, that it's still early. So if you think about some of the battery electric vehicle forecasts in the U.S., many of them say by 2030, 30% or 35% of all new cars sold in the U.S. are going to be battery electric vehicles. If we hit that, we need 30 million chargers in the U.S. 30 million. Now, people say, wow, how are you possibly going to do that? Now, keep in mind what the context of that is. That is a combination of residential charging. So whether I'm in a single-family garage or I'm in an apartment building, things like that, right? So that's
or in the UK, in London, an apartment building. Like you say, so many people in London are living in apartment buildings, that becomes very difficult to adopt.
And then the rest of it's going to be kind of public infrastructure, right? And again, at hotels, at malls, shopping centers, you go on and on. So when I think about those numbers, it gets me incredibly excited. This is not a linear thing. That nobody ever, expected this just to be a rocket ship without any bumps in the road. I'm old enough to know now that there's very few instances of new technologies or different things that hit the market that do that, right? So to me, this is a process. It got off to a super, super fast start. Now we're starting to see some rocks, and those will go away.
Yep.
And the market will find itself. There will be equilibrium, and we'll continue to move forward. So
okay.
Not worried about it.
Good. Earlier today, Mike, I was talking to some colleagues, coming over from Europe to America. I was saying, I love American politics. They're just constantly in debates. They're constantly on TV. I know. Nobody here does. But they're constantly on TV. They're constantly debating something. Let's hypothesize. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you're running for election. But if you're going to be the president in 2025, what's the first big thing you would do to try to unlock even more value within that EV ecosystem in the States?
So for us, I think if I were in that situation, it would be making sure that, again, we have the right charger, right place, right time, right? Making sure that we are planning correctly, we are planning appropriately, we're not tipping too far over our skis, we're not under-investing, we're not over-investing. But this is new technology, and it requires investment. So, it would be about working with the public sector, the private sector, really coming together to ensure that we do this smartly without hidden agendas and baggage.
Yeah.
But, wishful thinking maybe.
And you're excited?
Oh, couldn't be more.
I'm excited too. Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.